My mom called me a failure and kicked me out, then gave my brother the family house. 3 years later, he drove past my new home and froze. I had just gotten home from work. My mom was sitting across from me, and my brother Ryan was leaning against the counter with his arms crossed. Mom looked at me and said, "You're 31, you don't have a career, you don't have a family, and you're still living here. What exactly are you doing with your life?" I put my keys on the table. "I'm working, I pay my bills, I'm saving money." She laughed. "Saving for what? You've been saying that for years." Ryan smirked from the counter. I looked at him. "Do you have something to add?" He shrugged. "She's not wrong." That was when I realized they had already talked about me. Mom pushed a folder across the table. "I've decided Ryan should have the house." I stared at her. "What?" "He needs stability," she said. "He has a wife and a child. You're single. You can figure things out." I opened the folder. There were property documents, mortgage papers, and a transfer agreement. "You're giving him the house?" "Yes. I've been paying part of the mortgage for years. You were living here. I paid utilities, repairs, property taxes." Mom waved her hand. "That doesn't mean you owned anything." Then she looked straight at me. "You're a failure, and I'm tired of pretending otherwise." Nobody spoke. I looked at Ryan. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I stood up. "Okay." Mom frowned. "Okay? Yeah." I went upstairs and packed 2 suitcases, my work bag, and a box of personal things. I didn't argue. I didn't beg her to reconsider. When I carried everything outside, Mom stood in the doorway. "You'll come back when you realize you made a mistake." I looked at her. "I don't think I will." Then I walked away. For the next year, I rented a tiny apartment above a garage. The bedroom barely fit my bed, and the kitchen had 2 burners that took forever to heat up. I worked extra hours, cooked cheap meals, and saved every dollar I could. I stopped talking to my family. Nobody apologized. Nobody came looking for me. About 3 years after Mom kicked me out, I started looking seriously at houses. I found an older 3-bedroom house on a quiet street. The kitchen needed work, the floors were scratched, and the backyard was mostly weeds. But it was mine. I used my savings for the down payment and spent nearly every weekend fixing it myself. I replaced the floors, painted every room, rebuilt the back deck, repaired the fence, and planted a small garden along the fence. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. For the first time in years, nobody could tell me I didn't belong. I never posted pictures online, and I never told my family where I lived. Then, one Saturday afternoon, I was outside carrying a box of tools when I heard a car slow down. I looked toward the street. Ryan was driving. He passed my house and suddenly hit the brakes. His car rolled backward a few feet. He stared at the house. Then he looked at me. His face changed. He parked and got out. "Do you live here?" I set the box down. "Yeah." He looked at the house again. "You bought this?" "Yeah." He walked toward the driveway, staring at the new deck, finished yard, and second car parked beside mine. "What do you do now?" "Same thing I was doing before." He looked confused. "You're doing better than Mom said you were." I shrugged. I just kept working. Ryan stood there quietly for several seconds. Then he said, "The house isn't mine anymore." I didn't respond. He explained that Mom had transferred it to him. Later, he and his wife took out loans, fell behind on payments, and eventually had to sell it. I looked at him. "So why are you here?" He glanced at my house. "I wanted to see if you were really okay." I picked up my toolbox. "I am." He nodded slowly. Then his eyes moved toward my front door. "Mom knows where you live?" "No." He looked surprised. "She still talks about you." I smiled slightly. "She made her choice." Ryan looked down at the driveway. I should have said something back then. I didn't answer. He rubbed his hands together. I thought she was right. I looked at him. "And now?" He looked at my house. "Now I know she wasn't." He walked back toward his car. Before getting in, he turned around. "You know what's weird?" "What?" "When Mom gave me that house, I thought she was proving you were the failure." He looked at my house again. "Now I'm not so sure." He got into his car and drove away. I stood in my driveway until his car disappeared around the corner. Then I picked up my toolbox and walked inside. I shut the door. I locked it. 3 years earlier, I had walked away from a house my mother said I didn't deserve. Now I stood inside a house I had earned without her. And this time, nobody was standing behind me telling me I didn't belong. I set my toolbox on the workbench in the garage and looked through the window at the street. Ryan's car was gone. The house was quiet. I turned off the porch light, closed the blinds, and went back to work.